Three.
Hey, it's Brayden from Classics and Calamities. This is somewhat a brief overview of the last 12 years of owning my Torino. Unfortunately, it's the inspiration of this channel. I fell in love with the Torino looking at my dad's American car books, and I knew I would have one. I missed a few chances to get them in the local area, and for the next few years I was eager to buy one. Maybe too eager. When I was 15, I bought my first Torino. It was a 4-speed 390 car. The car had lots of rust and frame damage, so we couldn't tell because the home we bought it from was a dark kind of gravel floor garage. So we couldn't really look at it as we were buying it. We couldn't tell. We brought it home. The car had a 390 from a 61 truck and a Mustang 5-speed in it, and the car was just cobbled together.
And if I remember correctly, Brayden, that four speed I think was out of a 78 302 Mustang. So
it was like a T5 or something.
It wasn't any good.
Yeah, it was just thrown in there. We priced out what it would cost to fix it, and it was in like the 30 to 40,000 range to get the car frame pulled, all of the welding done. So it's like, no, we cut our losses, and a year later we bought my current Torino, sight unseen, in October 2011. The car was located in North Carolina. We called the sellers, references, and paid to have it shipped to North Dakota. On the way up, the person hauling the car, shipping it, hit a snowstorm. And the trailer crashed, and the rest of the cars on the trailer, there's a Corvette in front of it. Like, as it hit the ditch, the Corvette lurched forward and smashed into the front of the trailer, and it was just ruined. And the Torino just stood on the trailer, no issues. But we were burnt before with frame damage, so we measured the frame before we even pulled the thing off the trailer to see if we wanted to drive it home. And we did drive it home, but we didn't have a title. The seller forgot to give us the title for the car, and we ended up, getting our way through the border, and we drove it home in minus 10 to 15, stopping at every single little town to get coffee and warm up because the heater did not work in this car, and something not working in this car was a theme. Over the winter, we did maintenance. Safetied the car. It didn't need much. The actual guy that safetied it told us to come quick, look at the car. We went under the hoist, and we thought something was awful with it. And he said, I've never seen the factory Ford red oxide undercoating on a car before. So it was a good thing he asked us to come in there. But what we did over that winter was wheel studs, front and rear brakes, and bearings. So not a lot of stuff. In spring, we noticed the car had a bad overheating problem that would leave me stranded on the side of the road like every time I drove it. I had jugs of water in the car, and so when it happened, I would top the rat off, and we eventually had the radiator rebuilt to try and solve the problem. Our efforts to fix the cooling, involved changing the thermostat, replacing the clutch flange for a flex blade that seemed to help, but still ran really hot. The car had power when I first had it. It was a blast to drive. It would chirp the gears when we were shifting it. The power faded over the time as the posi gave out from constant abuse. I think on my part and a little bit on your part. We decided to change the intake to the Edelbrock Performer aluminum intake that I pulled off my other Torino. And I should have driven it to grad that way, but because I screwed with it 2 days before I had to go to graduation, the car wasn't ready. So I ended up asking Dad to take his 2008 Shelby GT500 to grad. So the car missed graduation, but as a positive, I was given grad gift of these long tube headers from my dad. And we didn't realize how much of a role that would play in the Torino's life story. That summer, I brought a real intake, an Edelbrock Performer RPM. The straight Performer version is junk. It's just a smaller port version of the S code, so I wouldn't never buy one. That summer, I went to the farm with my Torino, thinking that I could work on it when I had off time.
And how far away is the farm,
The
Brayden?
farm is 9 hours away, driving without a working fuel gauge. And as I was cruising on the highway, which you get the most airflow, my temps were 195 to 200 Fahrenheit cruising temp. Whenever I would slow down or stop, it would soar to 230. So like I was just getting gas, getting in, getting out, getting back on the road to cool this thing down. So it wasn't fun to drive because it was just so like you're just so worried about overheating all the time. In my free time on the farm, the free time I had, I installed the RPM intake. Now the car wouldn't run well for some reason. It just stopped running well. Later on, it was probably had to do with the distributor and me clocking it differently. But like at that point, change one thing and it didn't work. The car wouldn't run well, and it burnt through coils like crazy. For just I don't know why. So I brought it to Phoenix Auto Body, the little shop in Lucky Lake, Saskatchewan, because I was done with it not working. I was just take my money, make the car run. So they ran a new power wire and took out the old resistor wire that ran to the coil. With the new resistor coil in place, it helped, but the car still ran bad. I installed a new distributor, added Petronics and ignition to upgrade my car. It worked well and seemed to fix the ignition problems for now. When the summer was over, I enrolled in Bible school in Saskatchewan and drove my car there, the 68 Torino, with my brother's same color 68 Cougar. And both cars made it there fine, no overheating. So it seems like the intake changed and helped a lot with that. At Bible school, I was so afraid my car would be tampered or stolen that I switched a bunch of wires in the engine bay that only I would remember and stored it for the winter. Except I forgot. So when it came time to drive my car back to Winnipeg, it never started. It never worked. There's this rampant issues. So then, after I went home with someone else, my dad and his friend had to drive nine hours to the Bible school to trailer my car home. So I'm still very grateful for that. That spring, we fixed the self-inflicted wiring issue, and I drove it a handful of times. The overheating was largely fixed, but it still couldn't handle city driving. Took the car to work in Piney, Manitoba, and drove it to the States to pick up groceries. During the drive to the States, the lug nuts came loose, and I had to pull over and tighten them. Unfortunately, my tools were in the trunk, which is where you normally keep them. And the trunk was stuck shut. You turned the key, and it just didn't work. And you could just keep turning it. Somehow, the little clip in there just came undone while I was driving it. So, I had no tools, and the lug nuts I could just tighten by hand. So I would drive a couple kilometers, stop, tighten them by hand. And I had two friends in the car to show them how cool my car was. And no, I just had to stop for a little bit and tighten lug nuts. We got to the border guard was like, well, I have rights to cut your trunk open. And I'm like, I will sue you if you cut my trunk open. I'll just leave. No, it's fine. So we drove to the States, got groceries, found a shop on Sunday that was willing to open their doors to us so we could tighten the three we had left as tight as we could. And as we're driving back, we'd had the same issue. But we're going to the US side now, and a lug nut fell off as we were driving, so I was down to two, and we were searching between the borders. So I couldn't see each border. But when we went up, the guy was like, why were you searching in the ditch? So I guess they could see us from wherever they were at. Anyway, we got through, and we stopped at two lug nuts, being like, I don't know if we can get back. This is a bad deal. Someone stopped, and they got a 3/8 ratchet in their car, which was able to pull an armrest off in the back seat, pull the back seat up, climb through the back seat, open the trunk, get my tools, and then I was able to tighten these other ones back well enough to get back to base. So seemed like every couple months I drive this car, something horribly goes wrong. And generally it's my fault. If I would have made sure they're all torqued beforehand, I wouldn't have had that issue. But the overheating, I mean, not so much. But in fall, After all that, got the car back home safely. In fall, I enrolled into Red River Community College for mechanics. And
Good idea.
Brought my Torino there as much as possible. I figured I should learn how to work on the thing. I'm going to have to live in the engine bay. Brought my car in as much as possible to get as much work done as I could. I saw it as free hoist time, which is nice. I put in all new front suspension, serviced the rear end, and put in new rear springs to get the sag out. I wanted to install long tube headers and class, so we pulled the motor and ran out of time to work on the car. So my car was trailered back home in pieces. I did a few things to the motor while it was out, got the heads rebuilt, new timing chain, but at that point, the car sat for 2.5 years with no work done to it. It's sitting in the garage. I have in here as notes, sad music. The spring of fire college, so it'll be a year after, I went to Winnipeg. So after RRC, I sat for 2.5 years, and then I went to fire college for my paramedics degree and fire degree. That spring of that year, I wanted to drive my car. I wanted to get to my graduation. I missed my high school graduation, my fire graduation. So I went to Winnipeg every weekend from Brayden, 2-hour drive to work on the Torino. My friend Chris and I put the car back together. Got full dual exhaust and exhaust cutouts and installed a line lock. My friend Steven was installing a portion of it and wrecked my distribution block, adding a costly, it was $700 labor bill to the bill. I love him, he's a great guy. But, jeez. Regardless, I was able to bring it to Brayden for my graduation. The day before my graduation, I was driving the car, and I had a little, at that time, 2019, it was contemporary, no, whatever it was, 2016, brand new car, stopped in front of me, think of a Chevy Aveo, not even a nice new car, slammed on the brakes in front of me because they saw someone crossing the road, yards and yards ahead of them. So I slammed on my brakes in my Torino, but it doesn't stop as fast as a new little compact car. So I absolutely destroyed the back end of their car with the front end of mine. And I burst into tears like that. I worked so hard on this freaking car, and the lady was yelling at me for totaling her new car. I headed home, and as I was driving on the bridge to bring the car back to where I was staying, the hood flew up, and I couldn't see anything. And I'm on a bridge, and this is not a one-way bridge. This is a 2-lane, 2-way bridge. And so I just looked at the corner, looked at the wall, and I just kind of coasted to a stop, got out, slammed the hood, tears in the eyes, got back, and just drove back to where I was going. So ruined the hood, ruined the front end. I was pissed. So I still drove the car to grad. I was stubborn. The car worked, but it was smashed up. So I should have got a grad picture with it. I don't think I did because I was a little sour at the time, but
And if I could just interject, Brayden, as your father here, you called me after that accident. You said, "Dad, the worst thing in the world has happened," right? And I thought, "Oh my goodness, what happened to your girlfriend?" Right? Mm-hmm. And you said, "My car got in an accident." I'm there. Well, that can be fixed. That's not the worst thing, but that's how you felt anyway.
Also shows how much like my now wife. That's the worst thing in the world. Which I would agree. That's not the worst thing in the world.
Oh boy.
So I filed a claim and sent the car to a body shop to get fixed, and able to get my car back a week before my wedding. And the wedding happened, and the car was there, and it worked. The car was not overheating, and I even got it published in the local paper.
Yes.
Titled "Lucky Find," about the story of the Torino. It was a great year for the Torino. I did 3 8-hour-plus road trips, no problems, no issues. Then...
Yes, I had to mess with it.
Then... I talked to a guy in the car community. He called me up and he says, there's a chassis dyno day. You bring your car in for $50 to see how much horsepower you have, see what you run. At that time, man. I was telling people my car was making 360 horsepower. Advertised as 320-ish with a high flow intake and headers. Cutouts, double pumper, I was sure it was over 350. Like, I did all his work to it. Nope. Made 160 rear wheel horsepower. I had cutouts open. I was talking to guys. I was talking crap about other people's cars. And mine goes on the dyno. Right before I run, this one guy looks at someone. I don't care what it makes. It's a cool car. And I'm like, I'll show this guy. 160 rear wheel horsepower. I was so embarrassed. I even went to a different dyno to check. And the guy said that my second-hand estate sale carburetor, the main body on it was backwards. I was relieved. I'm like, there's my missing horsepower. He says, no, that's not going to fix anything. It's just going to change your miles per gallon, from 2 to maybe 5. Great. So, by the time that guy had finished up with the car, he got me some more horsepower. A 200 rear wheel horsepower, equally depressing. So I can't have a car that looks fast. The Torino looks fast. Good car. It only have 200 horsepower. So then I found a 428. I was looking for one. Found a 428. Still got a 390 at that point. 428 from a 66 Galaxy that was rusted beyond saving. And I got that 428 rebuilt.
And the original 390 is sitting here in his engine collection, right there. So it can be put back in if somebody had the desire to do so.
Yeah, if you want to be slow, 200 horsepower right there.
That's their 200 horsepower. With a 4-barrel.
With a 4-barrel, yeah. And big headers and dual exhaust and everything you can possibly do.
Tired old engine.
Smooth.
Yeah.
Got a whiff of lift.
Yeah.
The 428, once I got it built, for money, was over 500 horsepower. And I had some supporting mods, like a new rear end, true track locker, 31 spline axles, new drive shaft, and a transmission rebuilt by yours truly.
No, why would you try and rebuild a transmission? I mean, it's good to try, right?
Well, old transmissions are apparently easier to rebuild. The C6 is one of the easier ones to rebuild. And,
your footrest here. Yes.
And I figured that I'm pretty good mechanically sound. I have a friend that's very meticulous, and I'm not. Together, we would probably be able to do it, because I go too fast and he goes too slow. So together, we would be the perfect force to rebuild a transmission. Mm-hmm. So with Bank of Dad, we got some rollerized parts for the transmission to make it, less parasitic gray. I got a custom converter from TCS from Vancouver, great guys. With the transmission rebuilt, we threw the car together in 3 days. Not like I couldn't have done it sooner, but in 3 days we had a drag race 9 hours away in Swift Current that we had to go to.
Yes.
So the best way to break in a new combination, of course, is to go drag racing.
Straight to the drag strip.
Brand new transmission, brand new rear end, brand new everything. Let's go drag racing. Of course we failed tech. They caught some important things, like battery cutoff switch, dual return springs, but they missed a critical thing. I did not have time to hook up the e-brake or put in the seat belts.
Because you're so focused on going fast, yes.
So I did my first pass with tech happy, no belts, to a tune of 14.6 in the quarter mile. The car seemed to slip in first and second gear. Unconcerned, we forged ahead and put down the best pass of 1375. Mm-hmm. At this point, the car had overheated 3 times and had dumped water all over the pits. We were now worried about the transmission because the car would no longer go in reverse, but it would still go forward. So we sent it out again. because I could leave. But before I could leave the pits, I was stopped by Dave, to chase a noise. It ended up being an adjustment nut for a rocker fell off and was dancing around the top of the head.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yikes! He kept saying, "Braid." I'm like, "No, it's good. It's fine. It's fine. No. Okay, turn the car off. I want to drive it." So around this time, the car was starting horribly. The high torque starter was grinding and not catching the flex plate. It would take a few bumps to start. I fried the battery trying to start it. Starting over and over and over. We took a break, adjusted the trans first and second band that allowed the upshift, and gave them time for the motor to cool. At this time, we were able to get a fourth pass. I did a huge burnout on Bull Road slicks. That's how you do it. And was sent back to the pits due to the car's e-brake cable was hanging down. I zip tied it. I didn't have time to put it in.
If I remember, the announcer says, "Don't worry about that, boys. That thing was hanging down the day before."
So the starter ended up breaking. We winched the Torino back to the pits and onto the trailer and brought it home. I got the starter repaired and back in the car and drove it to a trans shop to get the diagnosis on what was wrong with the transmission. While doing that, I went over a bridge, and going down the bridge, I accelerated because I was trying to figure out the first and second gear, how it was shifting, and I got a ticket to the tune of $500. As a female cop, so I had no wiggle room to know how cool my car was. I also had drag slicks on it, and one of the rear taillights was out for a battery shut off.
We threw together at the track.
I had sportsman claps on it at a time on the window. So really couldn't fight the speeding ticket very well. The trans shop said that the transmission was destroyed and was surprised that it was still driving, and pulled out the fluid, and it smelled like just burnt tar and had the consistency of cherry Coke when you pulled it out, with little sparkles in it. So at that point, I parked the car in my garage and just let it sit. I spent all this money on the trans and the motor and the rear end and all this stuff, and it just blew up spectacularly. I got my stuff back in in September or whatever it was. So I was just the last race of the season. So at that point, it took me about till halfway through winter with sporadic heating in my garage to pull the trans out to try and get it professionally rebuilt. And at that, we pulled the engine out, and it looks like there was too much water in the block because we kept overfilling it for when we were overheating, and the block cracked. So my brand new 428 block, my 428 block was cracked, and my transmission was wrecked. And you thought you were depressed before, well, buckle up. Your $12,000 motor, your $2,000 transmission for parts was all ruined. And you got to do it all over again. So, brought my engine back to the engine builder, found another 428, maybe 20 miles from we bought the other one in Saskatchewan.
God bless Saskatchewan. They're just a great store. Yeah.
That thing was so seized. Took us weeks to get the pistons out of it and things like that. And we tried all the tricks. Eventually, we just put a bar in and broke the pistons out of it. So we don't care. Thing had 2 sleeves. It was 40 over. Don't care. Put it back in the car. And the transmission we brought to a transmission builder and got it professionally done. So when I asked him what was wrong with it, he says, it was 98% there. Everything was done right, but the pump housing bolts were loose, and the input shaft, the last shaft you put in the converter was just put in wrong. So just put in the wrong way. Yeah,
which is easily done, which is not a good design.
Right. So it's oh my gosh, we are almost there.
So close for your first attempt.
Close.
So
anyway, my brand new converter, which I had custom built for my car, and my build from Vancouver, I sent it back to them, and they said, "How did you do this?" Because I had to literally cut off the input shaft because it was welded into the converter. So they said they had to make me a whole new hub, and they asked me how much runtime I had on it, and I said about 30 minutes. So they gave me a discount on the new hub and sent me the other one because they wanted to have at least somewhat of a happy customer. And the transmission shop rebuilt my transmission, and I asked them if they had any performance servos. They said, "Oh yeah, we do have one. It's an H servo. We had it kicking around the shop for a while. So for $40, I bought the H servo off them."
Decided, yeah.
Which is actually a police interceptor servo, which are kind of retail now for like $400 online.
In here somewhere.
So that's fantastic. So then I put the transmission and engine.
And just on that servo,
yeah,
he told me the other day, and you don't even know this, but he says, "Boy, if I had known how rare those H servos were, I wouldn't have sold it to Brayden for that much, for that little, that little." Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, we're giving them business. I don't know. But so at that point, I got my motor refreshed and my transmission fixed. So what did I do? What was the first thing that I did with my brand new combination? I went racing. I signed up for a 2-day weekend instructor racing course on a 1.3 mile racetrack.
Road course.
Road course.
Yeah. So road course. So like Porsches and Audis and
and Caterhams, all that kind of stuff.
High-end Corvettes. Yeah.
$200,000 cars.
RX-7s.
And a Torino.
And a Torino.
I also convinced my younger brother to bring his brand new, just finished, like that build was finished for race day, 67 Cyclone GT. We pulled out of a farm in Saskatchewan.
God bless Saskatchewan.
And then my brother's 68 Cougar we brought my dad's GT500 2008 and my friend's GTI, but like 80s, 86 GTI, something like that, 84, 86.
Oh, it's really early, yeah. 82, 84. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, 3 of those cars were brought from the dead to do that race. The GTI, Blake Cyclone, and my Torino. I was doing awesome on the road course. They put us in the lowest class, C class for the best people, C for the best. There's A class and B class. The GT500 was an A class for some reason. Also did fantastic. But the Torino was the king of C class in my mind. And maybe that's not true, but in my mind it was. I was passing people, blowing their doors off. Because I got, with that new motor, I had 500 plus horsepower. Ripping on this thing. Full manual valve body on the transmission. Like, we're shifting first, second, ripping through the course. A lot of fun. But as we were allowed to go, a little bit faster, a little faster, give us more and more leeway. We had one set of, final laps before we were just going to be let off the hook. Didn't have to have an instructor.
Yeah.
So I had my instructor, who was a Porsche instructor. Somehow they slapped him into this thing. Did not feel comfortable in it, which was fun. But I had passed everyone on my circuit, first 4 cars in front of me until I had open space. And I was coming around the last corner when I blew a head gasket. So one pipe of my car was just shooting out white smoke. I went and pulled the car into the pits, turned the car off immediately, and that was my end of my race day. And so it turns out that from all the times I overheated my car the summer before, during that drag racing in Swift Current, that plus 29 day, plus 30 day.
Which is about, 90 Fahrenheit? Something like that.
Closer to 100 Fahrenheit.
Can't be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it's hot.
High. And so it's hot for us in Canada. But, so at that point, I guess that warped the head. So with the head machined, and I'm like, I'm done with this. MLS gaskets on the head. So we did that in the garage. The guys gave me the cylinder heads back, and I wanted to meet the race that was going to be in 2.5 weeks from the first one, because they gave us a free race after that to kind of get to get our numbers, how fast we are on the track. So we slapped the car back together, did the race. Car ran a little different. I didn't really understand what the issue was, but it was still a blast to drive, and I just kept overheating it again. And that issue, I didn't overheat it to the point where it was dumping coolant out, but it kept getting super hot. And I had too much antifreeze in the car. But we fixed that. And that summer we had a big event. We had Miles of Mayhem we're going to. So not only did I have a brand new build that I raced and already blew a head gasket, I decided to go and do a torture road trip tour with the car. They're like, if it's gonna hold, it's gonna hold. Everything's gonna survive. It's gonna be great.
Yeah. So Miles, go ahead.
You can see the motor's no longer in the car.
No.
So if it was in the car, it would have been fine.
And how rare was that event? Motor out of the car, Brayden.
Yeah. So Miles of Mayhem, we did that, and it was fun. We got out there, we trailered the cars out there, and I put a gear vendors in my Torino for Miles of Mayhem, which gives me that overdrive. So for gas mileage, but also because we got it on a swap meet. So let's do it. So I wired that all in, put a vacuum pump in my car because it made no vacuum, and we were ready to do the trip. So we went in first couple of days, and it just was fighting with the carburetor the whole time. The first couple of days out there, and just couldn't get the car to be happy. At idle, it wouldn't want to idle. Nothing would, it behaved so nicely the weeks before, and as soon as we got out there, it was just driving really, really badly. We did the first couple of days out there at the Edmonton track, I think it is. The car, I can't remember what the 8th mile was, but it wasn't spectacular. I was just trying to bracket race, trying to hit my number. And we did that, and we got some parts rushed over for the car. We built the car several times, and it just never got any better. So we drove the car to Saskatoon for day 2, raced it in Saskatoon, and right as we were going to leave Saskatoon, other people had some serious problems too that we ended up fixing. My car's rod started knocking, some rod knock in the motor. So I turned the car off, and that was it. This car was kaput again. Another drag racing adventure.
Another racing adventure where the racing wins and the car did not quite perform. Yeah.
So I do lots of upgrades every year to make my car better. For this year, for some weird reason, I've picked longevity upgrades. So part of those longevity upgrades is an AccuSub. So if I ever lose oil pressure again, I'm going to have oil pressure.
In the unlikely event.
Unlikely event I ever lose oil pressure again. Oil pressure. AccuSub system, $1,000. Yeah. Is that fun? No. It's not fun. It'll make you go faster, but it makes you not... You can drive your car.
All right. You've had a lot of carburetor issues, too.
Yeah, so F that. So we're going to go Holly Sniper.
Oh, okay.
My brother has one in a 67 Cyclone, and it runs so nicely. You turn the key, it starts every time.
As long as you have a good ground.
Yeah, and I have a Holly Dell pumper with no choke on it because race car, and it barely ever wants to start. So that sucks. So yeah, Holly Sniper. A 25 PSI valve for my AccuSub. So if my oil pressure ever drops below 25 PSI, a red light goes on my dash, and this thing dumps 3 quarts of oil right into my motor at 60 PSI, or whatever my idling oil pressure is. So then that will potentially save me. Or hard cornering will save me if I can drive my car that fast, which is, hopefully.
So, and are you still thinking of going to back to the road course?
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Even though I blew my head gasket and potentially hurt my motor because of that. Yeah.
So my favorite story from that one is you going to get some gas. Oh, no. Tell that story.
Okay, so this car is not good on gas, so we fill it up with premium because I have to because of the compression, life decisions, and then we filled it up with premium, and there's a new gas tank there, and I was like, Sure, I'll let him do it. I normally fill up my cars. So he filled it up and then somehow puts the gas cap on wrong. I don't even know how you can do that. But he puts it on all... I have a pipe in there because I'm going to drill a hole in the gas tank. That looks weird. But he somehow puts the cap on all shife. And then I'm driving down the road course with this dumping fuel out of the back of my car.
Because this thing went acceleration, the fuel would come out like this, and this would act as a ramp, and then fuel comes shooting up all over your brother's '67 Cyclone GT.
Yeah, Blake was trying to race me, and I just James Bond the crap out of him, dumping fuel all over the front of his car so he can't pass me.
That didn't stop him anyway, but
no, he tried, but it didn't work.
Yeah, he's got the same disease you do, and I do, for that matter.
So anyway. We're doing that. So what other quality of life decisions? So when my head gasket blew, we went and opened the hood of my car at the racetrack, and it showed that I was one lap away from cutting through my trans cooler line, because like when my motor torques when I drive it, horsepower stuff, the Mach balancer pulley would touch the trans cooler line, the hard lines, and so it just gouged a groove out of it that it was actually seeping out. So I think Jesus poked a hole in my head gasket to be like, no, because you're gonna flip your car. Okay, my whole thought process on the Torino for that race day was it was good. I'm not opening the hood. The car was driving fine. I was fast. I'm not opening the hood. I'm not gonna touch it. Catherine hates new parts. This is Catherine.
Catherine the Great.
Yeah,
right?
Catherine the Great. Yeah, woman feared by many, but maybe feared by my bank account more than other people. Maybe feared by my wife more than other people. Anyway, also my steering wheel almost fell off. I had one of the 3 bolts on for one of the laps, and as I was driving, taking one of the corners, my horn button wire went and it went and shorted on something else, and then I was like, huh, and then some smoke came out of my steering wheel. My driver instructor looked over at me. What's going on? Nothing, it's fine. Oh, okay. Finished the lap because race car doesn't matter. We're in school, it's training. But no, I drive my cars like I can afford to rebuild them, and I think that's the issue. Anyway, so the decisions are to make it reliable. So how are we going to do that? Well, I'll show you what Summit has to say about that.
Right. So let's look at this. Yeah, well, what are you doing this year to maybe break the curse?
Oh, it just for sure break the curse. Where's the wood? We're going to see what temperature my transmission's running at. Because I don't know.
Might be a good idea.
Might be good. It might be bad. So we'll check the temperature. That'll be cool. We're going to have an AccuSump. We're going to have an EFI. EFIs require drilling a hole in your gas tank, which I just alluded to. So we're going to get a fuel pump. EFI fuel pump system for it. Right in the description it says, does not fit my car. But under good authority, we did a 67 Cyclone, they fit. So I'll make it work. So that one, not cheap. We also have a trans cooler. I have a trans cooler on the car, but I'm now afraid of dumping transmission fluid all over the place. And this one has specific threaded ends to it, so I can actually use threaded lines instead of just like the barb fittings. So that's just going to be safer, and hopefully my transmission stays cool and I don't have to rebuild it. Every time you take the engine out of this car, you got to take headers out. And if you ever taken headers out on this style of car with shock towers, and I don't have small headers. I have freaking big boys. And I'm not joking when I say the shock tower is like right here. Right here. You're trying to put bolts in? No, too bad. You have a shock tower right here. It's like life's hell.
Remember asking Blake after we did his 67 Cyclone was also with a FE motor in it.
Yeah.
Right? In his case, a 410 Mercury 416, I guess. But would you do this if somebody paid you $1,000? He goes,
no.
No.
The answer is if someone asks you, pay you $1,000 to do headers. The answer is no. No. So, got that. More Summit stickers added to the pile. Freak. Like I need more. Like, bunch of AN lines for the car. Like just heaps of fittings. Just we're gonna be doing AN fuel lines and transcooler lines all the way through.
Nice and strong and safe. Yeah.
That's the emphasis.
People may want to know what this car is beside you here, just briefly.
Oh, that's some British thing, yeah. It's, from Saskatchewan.
Yeah, we bought it.
Land of cars.
We bought that and sold it. I hope that's still here.
We both made $50 on this car, so that's why we have money for all this stuff. This is a '68 Cortina, and the guy is building it to be a purpose-built race car, and he's putting a 289 in it. It's going to be a high rev screamer.
And how's the width of this engine bay compared to the width of the shock towers?
Oh, this engine bay is bigger, like as far as width goes. By like, it's not even close. It's like 28 inches to like 35.
Well, if we could stuff it in lengthwise, which you can't really, but if you could, it'd be easier to put the headers into this thing than this intermediate size car. Anyway, all right.
Yeah, we was going to win NASCAR, so that thing. Yeah. Also, bad life decisions. I bought a Lincoln spool gun so I could do aluminum welding because, you know, for all the things I got to fix in the future. So, that's kind of the brief overview of the life of the Torino. It's been a lot of heartache for the amount of joy it's given me, but we're going to try and even the playing field this year with more racing and see if it survives.
So we're here today to work on it because there's racing ahead of us shortly.
Yeah, also got see if it comes out of here. Big old deep sump trans pan with big fins on it. Try and have more fluid in there and more cooling as well. So doing all we can for longevity this year. And see if that helps. Well, we also did horsepower things. I got the heads professionally ported, and they took a lot off. And I went from dual plane to a single plane, professionally ported.
And aluminum heads.
Aluminum heads, yeah.
Yeah.
So the goal is 500 rear wheel horsepower. So we'll do a chassis dyno this year, and if we make it that far, and then go. Maybe
more than 200. It will be more than 200. But,
well, if it's 200, I think I quit. I'm gonna buy a Prius.
I'm being joking. So that's a sad story. But anyway.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's why he's calling it Classics and Calamities. So stay tuned for the further adventures of Catherine the Great? ?
Yeah. And there's lots of old cars around us that I get my hands on, so there's going to be calamity wherever I go, it seems like. So
yeah, well, then there's, there's a couple things that are just kind of interesting as well, just to briefly, right out there in the bright sunshine outside here is Brayden's wife's car, a nice 63 low mileage Fairlane 500 we found sitting in a garage as basically a shelf with stuff piled everywhere. And that's just such a fun, reliable car. A little bit different than how reliable yours have been.
Yeah, you know why it runs so good?
Nobody messed with it.
I'll mess with it. Yeah, that's why.
All right. So we see a theme. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Stay tuned later.